The French Revolution was a turning point in history that changed the landscape of France and Europe forever. Many factors account for the revolution, but the Mississippi Push was a huge, lesser-known factor. Let's dive into its details. But before we get started, welcome to Tales of Titans, the place where business and history come to life. Let's look at the history of the Mississippi Land Rush and how this event caused the infamous French Revolution. The future state of Mississippi was a part of the French colony from 1699 to 1763. The French had big plans for the land, like all colonizers do. They were busy exploring and setting up new trade, settlements, and military outposts. They made new friends and some foes with the local Native American folks who inhabited these lands. The French had big dreams of striking it rich, but things didn't quite pan out as planned. Still, their time in the region left its mark, shaping Mississippi's culture in ways that stick around even today. The French era in Mississippi's history began when René Robert, Cavalier de La Salle, conquered and claimed the area for France. This happened during his famous voyage down the Mississippi River in 1681. He named the region Louisiana in honor of French King Louis XIV. However, he failed to solidify the claim by establishing a settlement and military outpost, leaving the newly claimed area vulnerable. It took a whole decade for the French government to take the matter into their own hands. They fortified the region and developed it into a functioning colony. The French government chose Pierre Lamont, Sieur d'Albertville, to lead the colonization of Louisiana. He was a native French from Montreal, Canada, and was known for his bravery and gallantry in fighting the British, France's oldest enemy. His experience earned him an important command in Louisiana. In January 1699, Iberville's fleet of ships reached the Gulf Coast. They dropped anchor near Ship Island on February 10th, and 3 days later, Iberville stepped out onto the shores of what's now Ocean Springs. He moved quickly to obtain the friendship of the local Biloxi by providing them with food and gifts. There, he learned about a river to the west, which he believed was the Mississippi, earlier explored by La Salle. After exploring the west, he confirmed it was indeed the Mississippi. Iberville obtained from the local people a letter left with him by La Salle's trusted assistant, Henri de Tonty, in the mid-1680s near the Mississippi, confirming his doubt. Unfortunately for Iberville, he couldn't find a good spot for a fort along the river, so he went back to the coast. After some hunting, he found a deep enough channel for ships and decided to build a fort on the eastern side of Biloxi Bay in April 1699. This fort, named Maurepas after the French Minister of Marine and Colonies, became Mississippi's first European settlement and the initial capital of the French colony of Louisiana. One thing colonizers love to do is name everything. Why not a simple name? Mississippi Fort sounds nice. Fort Maurepas had 4 squared long bastions and 12 guns. Inside there were a barracks, a storehouse, and even a chapel. With around 80 men, the fort served as a base for exploring the area for the rest of 1699. Despite getting a foothold in the south along the Gulf of Mexico, things got tough for the French at Fort Maurepas. The heat ruined crops, water was scarce, everyone got sick, and discipline fell apart. The local Biloxi people helped out, but it wasn't enough. On the other hand, a possible war was brewing with England. To cozy up to Spain, France's ally, the French moved the struggling settlement to Mobile in 1701. By 1702, Fort Maurepas was deserted. Although the capital briefly moved back to the Biloxi area from 1719 to 1722, it eventually settled in New Orleans. But with Fort Maurepas failing, the Mississippi Gulf Coast lost its importance in French plans for development. Establishing itself along the Mississippi River was a top priority for France in the early 1700s. They had their eyes set on Natchez, a prime location perched on a high bluff with fertile soil. In 1716, they erected Fort Rosalie there, hoping it would become a bustling settlement hub. However, things took a turn for the worst with the local Natchez tribe. The French didn't play nice. straining their relationship by taking advantage of the Natchez hospitality. Then, in 1729, tensions reached a breaking point when French officials demanded land, including the sacred White Apple Village, a very typical thing for a colonizer to do. This was a ceremonial center of utmost importance to the Natchez. The Natchez were fed up, and they decided it was time to put their foot down and stand up for what was rightfully theirs. On the morning of November 28, 1729, the Natchez launched a fierce attack on the fort, resulting in the deaths of around 300 people and the capture of numerous women, children, and black slaves. Meanwhile, a smaller French garrison located farther north near present-day Vicksburg faced a similar assault from Natchez allies, the Yazoo. In response, the French swiftly dispatched reinforcements to retaliate against the Natchez. It took them 2 years, but eventually they wiped out the whole tribe. Despite the devastation, the French managed to repair and restaff the fort. However, the settlement at Natchez struggled to recover and remained stagnant for decades, only starting to bounce back long after the French had left. France wasn't just about settling down. Making money was just as crucial as it needed to fund France and its military. They wanted a stable agricultural economy, so they suggested colonists grow tobacco, indigo, and rice. They also got in on the deerskin trade, which turned out to be a gold mine for the colony. Well, that's one way to get bread on the table, even if it was scarce. But here's the kicker. The colony ended up costing France more than it brought in. To fix things, France decided to hand over the reins to a private company. The first private attempt was made by Anthony Crozet, who received a charter from King Louis XIV in 1712. Crozet never visited the colony, but instead sent his agent, Antoine Lumont de la Motte Cadillac, to serve as governor. Cadillac spent over 4 years butting heads with other officials, continuously trying and failing every time to lift the colony out of poverty. Eventually, Crozet threw in the towel and handed the colony back to France in 1717. After Crozet, France handed control to John Law. He created the Mississippi Company, selling shares and promising big profits once the colony grew. But Law's plan flopped in 1721, and he ran off to avoid trouble. The company went back to its parent company. One of the biggest changes during Mississippi's time as a private colony was the arrival of African slaves. They came to help with all sorts of work, especially farming. Their numbers shot up fast, going from 3,400 in 1731 to about 6,000 in 1763. This brought in a whole new set of rules called the Code Noir, or Black Code, penned by Iberville's brother Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, Sieur de Bienville. These laws controlled how slaves behaved and limited what free black people could do. Getting people to move to French Mississippi was tough. At first, some came looking for a better life or quick money, but as word spread about the colony's problems, fewer folks showed up. In a desperate move, the French government rounded up troublemakers and sent them to Louisiana. They also sent single French women to marry settlers. These ladies, called cassette girls because of their suitcases, did help some families, but overall, the plan didn't work out. Mississippi stayed mostly empty during the French era. In the 1730s, Britain started Georgia Colony, claiming land up to the Mississippi. British traders befriended Chickasaw Native Americans. When the Chickasaws wouldn't give up Natchez refugees, the French launched an attack in 1736 at Acquia, but failed. They tried again in 1740, and this time the Chickasaws backed down and signed a treaty, though they remained a threat to the French. On the other side of the world, France was taking a beating from England, despite all their efforts to keep them contained and held back. After many battles, England finally beat France in the French and Indian War. In 1763, France gave all its land in North America to England. France was relieved to get rid of Louisiana because it was expensive and troublesome. The Mississippi land rush didn't directly cause the French Revolution, but it added to France's money problems. It hurt a lot of people financially. To recover, the government borrowed a ton of money and raised taxes, making life harder for regular folks, the commoners. This, along with other issues like unfairness and corruption, eventually led to the French Revolution in 1789. The people from upper states such as clergy and nobility lived comfortably and paid low taxes. The commoners did the toughest jobs in fields and workshops and faced heavy taxes. The sectarian monarchy was so widespread that every farmer, worker, and laborer was ready to take a stand against this unfair treatment. This caused a clear social division amongst the masses and sparked the French Revolution, a revolution that killed thousands of innocents and would inevitably change French history. And there you have it. That's how the Mississippi land rush caused the French Revolution. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more amazing content. I'll see you in the next one.